Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the TNT Tuesday Night Titans review series, and this is the August 7th edition, 1984. If you're new here, please check out the playlist of the other TNTs. We're eventually going to run through them all. Also, check out other content, and if you have content you'd like to see, like, subscribe, comment below. We'll see what we can do to get you what you're looking for. This is an abridged version. The version that I have only runs about an hour and 14 minutes total runtime. So there's about anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes missing. But the good parts are here. We open with Vince McMahon talking to Ken Patera. Of course, one of the original Intercontinental Champions behind Pat Patterson. I believe Patera might be the second Intercontinental Champion. Behind Pat Patterson. Patterson, of course, crowned in 1979. I believe Patera crowned in 80. This is 1984, so Patera has taken a little bit of time off here. But anyway, worth noting that Patera comes back here, and he is not really... He's better spoken than I imagined him to be. And what I mean by that is, for a top heel, he's given more leeway to be entertaining and a little bit more educating and knowledgeable. Of course, Patera winning 4 medals in the Pan Am Games, representing the United States for weightlifting in, I believe, the Olympic Games. World powerlifting champion multiple times over. He shows several traditional Olympic lifts here to try to get people educated about lifting. He really is quite educational. If you have never seen this before, worth going out of your way to see the feats of strength. He also bends a metal bar, which just, wow, it blows your mind. The other segment in this, which we'll get to in a second, he's holding back a vehicle with just his feet braced against he's braced against a wall and holding back a vehicle with his feet. I'll get there in 1 second. There's a match with Billy Joe Travis in here, the full Nelson, and a bunch of power moves. Patera really set up to look like a world beater here, tosses him around. It's really a shame that he gets nailed for the throwing the brick through the window when in the AWA incident, because I wonder how the Rock and Wrestling era would have changed had Patera been around for the initial WrestleMania and not had to come back as a lame duck in 87, 88. Because by that point his body had let go, being in jail two and a half years, and he couldn't withstand the punishment. I never got to see Ken in person. Would have liked to. Of course, Ken trained by Verne Gagne and came up around the same time as Ric Flair, oddly enough, in 1972, 73. Long pedigree by this point, over a decade in sport at this point, in the chronology. But yeah, if you've never, and I'll go out of my way to say this, if you have never seen the hold back a vehicle with your legs deal here, oh my gosh. I don't know how much of this is legit, how much of it's a work. I'll be free to admit that I don't think any of it's a work. I think it's like a legit strength thing, but I don't know that for sure. So skepticism abounds. In any event, Ken Patera goes outside. He sits himself long sit style against a brick wall. He puts both of his legs against the front bumper of a minivan. He then proceeds to hold the van while Vince McMahon is driving the van towards him. He holds the van in space, and there's a couple cut scenes where the van tires are smoking and squealing, and that I assume it's real. I don't know. It looks kind of funky with the way they do the cut scenes, but regardless, even a guy just pinning himself against a wall for 2 seconds against a vehicle and being able to survive that is a big deal. And Patera does it for several more than 2 seconds. So if you've never seen that before, go out of your way to see that. That is something that is worth seeing on this program. Ace Freeman is up next. He is a old school promoter and wrestler. We see him in the highlight segment for the time period. Um, Definitely worth checking out here. Um, they bring back the nostalgia thing. He talks about knowing Al Hayes and Vince McMahon and Vince's father and all that. Certainly not a guy that modern era fans would know, and I don't know enough about him to educate you on him. I'm sorry for that, but suffice to say, if you like the old school feeling, he will give you that. We see highlights of the Haiti Kid before the Haiti Kid is interviewed. Haiti Kid says he has wrestled all over the world in 70 plus countries. He talks about loving the opportunity and having to be ready to go at any time, never having time off. He talks about, the world of midgets. Obviously, there's a couple of midget segments in here. Danny Carpenter, I believe, his opponent. And I think they show another Carpenter match in the next episode as well. I know they show Haiti Kid again. But, the typical comedy midget spots, which probably wouldn't play well today. But, an interesting fact that I do want to bring up. I've probably known, and saying known well, in other words, known as people, at least half a dozen midget wrestlers in my time. And save for one of them, 5 out of the 6 all said to me that they wished people left the freak show element alone and let them go and do their thing. And I would say to each of them, why? And they said, well, it's harder to get a good quality, high-paying job when you have this physical disability. If there's midget wrestling, if there's midget tossing at nightclubs, if there's freak shows, as touring acts or circuses or anything like that, that's good money just because you have a height disadvantage. Now, obviously, there's those in the community, in the height challenge community, that would take offense to it. But for the folks that I've talked to over the years, they liked having the option to be able to be a touring act, and they liked performing. They liked, because their basic logic was, and I've actually heard Tiger Jackson, who was Dink or at least played Dink for a little while, Doink's midget sidekick. I heard him one time talk about in a locker room, if you take away that I'm working some menial job, you give me this and I can travel the world and feed my family and have a good time and entertain people. And then when the show's over, if I want to educate some people on issues that the height disadvantaged face, I can do that because they've seen me perform and they like me. So now I can use it as a tool for education. So it's an interesting dichotomy when you talk to people who are in that position. In general. So obviously the referee spots and the bite the referee's backside and the pin the referee spots, all that's here. Haiti Kid, really an entertaining individual. I'm trying to remember. I know he was on Piper's Pit. I think that was in early '85. Yeah, because it had to be because of the Mr. T thing. So we haven't gotten there yet, but that's probably most notably the Piper's Pit, where he gets his head shaved, is what Haiti Kid most known for. But worth going out of your way to check this out if you've never seen Haiti before. Tito Santana joins the show, talks about the stresses of being the Intercontinental Champion and the joy of same. He talks about wanting a diverse bit of competition. He talks about being grateful for opportunities. Tito, really a well-spoken guy here. I wish his accent wasn't quite so thick, and it's not for the reason you think. I don't mean that in a prejudicial way, but I do think there are people that didn't give Tito the credit that he could have gotten. There was a point in his career that I think Tito could have been a world champion, and that was considered during the steroid trial of 1992. If you read enough books on it, Tito was on a short list of 3 to 5 guys that was considered before Bret Hart was given the opportunity, and I really think Tito could have been the touring, traveling champion type, especially in the 80s. in another vein, or that early '90s thing. Obviously, you're not going to choose Tito over Hogan, but had Hogan gone down with an injury and you needed a baby face for 6 months, I think Tito could have slid into that spot super well. But I do think his accent and lack of complete command of the English language hurt him a bit. Here we see him excuse me, help to prepare food for the audience and Vince and others. He prepares tacos and tamales and burritos, and just a funny side story. Um, there's an urban legend that Vince McMahon, current day, eats burritos like every day for lunch and maybe a snack or whatever, but yet he had no idea that it was called a burrito. But yet here he's eating burritos on stage with Santana. You can go. I forgot who it was. One of the writers from probably the last 10 years or so mentioned the burrito story for Vince. You can search that out online if you're more interested. But suffice to say, Vince was eating burritos for an extended period of time. I didn't know they were called burritos. Anyway, we take a look at the returning Nikita Volkov. Volkov, of course, a mainstay with the Bolsheviks in the late 80s, early 90s, doing the U.S. sympathizer turn in 1990, 91, but actually has a history with the company all the way back to 1974. They play the Russian national anthem for him, which this is a time when a lot of people don't get music, but they do here. Then we go into a squash match for a guy whom um, whom we don't see a lot of in the WWF. I don't know how many television appearances he has because I haven't seen a lot of championship wrestling from the time. But the spoiler, John Dardine. Yeah, and I probably still butchered that, but anyway. Um, he is famous for the advent of a move that we all now know as old school with The Undertaker walking the top rope. He walks the ropes here in this squash match, so if you want to know where that came from and the fact that that was around before Taker, worth checking out this segment here. Referred to as the national champion, which I believe is a nod to Georgia at the time. I believe Georgia had a national heavyweight championship at this time, and he was allowed to be referred to by that championship moniker here in 1984. But that's the program in a nutshell. Like I said, worth going out of your way to check out the Haiti Kid stuff. Definitely worth going out of your way to check out the van stoppage by Ken Patera and most of the Patera segment overall. But that's this review for this particular program. Once again, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back with more TNT momentarily. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Till next time, everybody.